In a memo, the outside counsel hired to question Christine Blasey Ford argues no reasonable prosecutor would bring criminal charges based on her testimony. Rachel Mitchell lists 9 apparent weaknesses, citing inconsistencies in Blasey Ford's inability to remember key details like how she got home. Mitchell said the testimony lacks witness cooperation and evidence. She also writes the activities of congressional Democrats likely affected Dr. Ford's account. Democrats have argued that Kavanaugh is interviewing for a job and the witness was not on trial.
The delay in Brett Kavanaugh's confirmation could force President Trump to push back a meeting with Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein for another week. The president called the meeting after Rosenstein reportedly suggested recording the president in secret and discussed whether Mr. Trump could be removed under the 25th Amendment. Rosenstein denies that happened. If he's forced out, that could affect special counsel Robert Mueller's probe of Russian interference in the 2016 election. That investigation, which Rosenstein oversees, is the focus of Greg Miller's new book, The Apprentice: Trump, Russia, and the Subversion of American Democracy. Miller is national security correspondent for The Washington Post, part of a team that won the Pulitzer Prize this year for reporting on the Russia probe. Good morning.
Good morning, John. Thank you.
What's going to happen to Rosenstein?
So, huge question, really, with big implications. I would think it would be hard politically to fire Rosenstein ahead of the elections, in part because, you know, you'll end up looking like, again, you're impeding an investigation, which is what the Republicans are up against even in the Kavanaugh hearings right now. How far are they willing to let the FBI go to do its work there? How can you do that twice leading up to the election? It seems dangerous, but then it's Trump. You never know. He could be out with a tweet, you know, before we even know it.
But you write about Rosenstein, he's a very low-key guy. He never wanted to be front and center. And he became front and center because of the president. And in a way, he got back at the president, you say.
Right. I mean, he's not a guy who seems to like the spotlight very much, but he has taken it at key moments in this whole saga. So, you know, the White House, when Trump decides he's going to fire Comey, they hang that decision on Rod Rosenstein. They have him write a memo explaining the rationale. Rosenstein somehow is just caught off guard, doesn't see that coming. When he submits that memo, he doesn't see how he's being set up. And he, you know, that animates him and angers him, motivates him. He's the one then who then sort of secretly, hiding this all the while from the White House, even from Jeff Sessions, decides to appoint a special counsel and decides on Bob Mueller to lead it.
In particular.
You do such terrific reporting throughout this book. And one of the things we picked up on was that former director of the CIA, Michael Morell, talks about the Russian influence in the 2016 election. He calls it the political equivalent of 9/11.
Yeah.
The question has always been about collusion or coordination with the Trump campaign. What have you found that Bob Mueller perhaps is zeroing in on?
Well, Bob Mueller has a lot that we don't. I mean, he has kept such a close hold on where his investigation's going. But the many indictments that we've seen so far give us a lot of clues. Obviously, he's very, very focused on the obstruction front, and his interest in these figures around Trump, including Trump's fixer and lawyer, are ways to get at that question. And his deal with Manafort take him much closer to figuring out, is there collusion? Is there a deal?
What do we know about Trump's finances, given his business interests?
His finances have always been sort of really opaque, but the closer you look at them, the more troubling they can seem, right? There is a lot of money coming from unknown sources, a lot of weird changes in direction in his financial empire over the year, including going from somebody who believed in borrowing heavily for everything he did to suddenly paying cash for everything with no real clear sense for where all that money came from.
Greg, people have always looked at the tax returns, in part because of the role they played in the campaign as the kind of Rosetta Stone to understand all of this. Is that your view? Does Mueller have those tax returns?
That's a huge question. I imagine he does. We don't know for sure, but he can get tax returns pretty easily. I think he has a lot more than tax returns. I mean, he is dealing with Trump's basically his CFO now and getting lots of information.
You write about the similarities between Trump and Mr. Mueller, which I thought were surprising.
Yeah, I say superficial similarities.
But you say, but there are really key differences in their leadership styles.
Yeah, I mean, when you look back at their backgrounds, you just couldn't find two more contrasting individuals, and I thought this was fascinating and spend a great deal of time in the book talking about it. Because Trump was known as a bully from the very beginning, from his grade school days, liked picking on people, liked making people uncomfortable, liked even picking on teachers and making them uncomfortable. Mueller has
Set up a tanning booth in
sets
college.
up a tanning booth in his dorm room, and he's just doing crazy stuff. Mueller has this code that emerges very early on in his life, and there's a scene in the book where I write about somebody he's at a lunch in his prep school. Somebody's getting picked on who's not there to defend themselves, and he cuts off the conversation and walks out of the room. He won't stand for that kind of behavior. And you just sort of see this violent conflict and clash of ideas and approaches to life and codes between Mueller and Trump.
Trump, a draft dodger, didn't go to Vietnam, and how many tours did Bob Mueller do?
Mueller does, I believe, one tour, but it's a pretty eventful one.
Yes.
I mean,
pretty
he's wounded. He's multiple awards. He enlists because one of his upperclassmen at Princeton is enlisted ahead of him.
Yeah. Greg Miller, it's a fascinating book.
Thank you.
And incredible reporting. We'll
Thank
keep
you.
The
reading
title's
Islands.
interesting, too, Greg.
Yeah, isn't that?
Yeah.
Where'd that come from?
We should just note also that we did reach out to the White House about your book. We didn't hear back from them, but we always check with both sides here.